Hi, my name's Marlene Brown, and I am past president of the New Mexico Solar Energy Association. Welcome to another Women in Solar session. We've done this before. This is the second time we're going to do this. So I'm going to talk for a little while, but the idea of this is to promote discussion among us women in solar. This is for anybody and everybody, but what it's for specifically is for women to become more technically involved in the field. It's for us to ask ourselves some questions and have some discussion among ourselves about what is going on in solar, and for us to talk as women in the field. So why do we want to be in the field? What drives us? When will we be there, and how will we know that? And what do we need to know now, and what do we need to know tomorrow? So some of the specialties in photovoltaics, some of the specialties are photovoltaics, or PV, solar thermal, which is hot water and hot air. There's passive solar, there's solar cooking, there's wind, and there's other forms of solar. So when I talk about solar, there's different types of solar. That includes PV or photovoltaic, solar thermal, which is hot water, hot air, passive solar, solar cooking, there's wind, and there's other forms also. So what are the barriers? When I talk to women in the field, when I talk to people in the field, and especially women, I want to know what stops us from doing what we want to do, what holds us back. What are our fears, and what are we scared of? What are we worried about, what others think, and what do they think? And where does this start? I think it starts when we're young. We need to start talking to girls when they're young. We need to have them believe in themselves, and we need to be mentoring them at an early age. And what about compensation? What about that? Do we need a certain amount of money? What do we need to be okay? And are we getting paid the same as men in the same field? How are we even going to know that? And how do we get taken seriously? I can tell you personally that it's taken me a very long time. I've paid my dues for a very long time in this field. And I am taken seriously, but that wasn't true always. So these are just general information about women and really to get us started in discussion. But most women's work remains unpaid, unrecognized, and undervalued. So less than 10% of the technical workforce are women. We make up only 20% of chemists, earth scientists, and computer scientists. We make up only 18% of science and engineering majors in college. 3 out of 4 working women in the U.S., including full and part-time workers, make under $25,000 a year. So what does it take to make us women in solar? I think that these statistics may have changed somewhat since I first put them up there, but they haven't changed enough. We still have a lot of work to do. The gender poverty nexus has distinct gender characteristics. Of the approximately 1.3 billion people living in poverty, it's estimated that 70% are women, many of whom live in female-headed households in rural areas. So what does that tell us about women in the developing world? There's many, many, many women head of households. And in many developing countries, women take control of the money, of the house in general, of the cooking, all of that. And so what we have to do is we have to somehow get to the women that are working so hard. We have to be able to teach them. We have to be able to communicate with them. And we have to be able to somehow empower them. And one of the things we can do is we can give them power. We can give them cooking techniques. Helping women just with cooking saves hundreds of hours a year for women collecting firewood and having to do all the cooking and make all the meals. So teaching each other and passing that information on is critical. We need to get to a place where we in the developed world can communicate to folks in the developing world, because there's no reason that we can't all have the same information. So how many women are in solar? Do we even know? I'll tell you, it's not enough. There's more all the time. So when I started in photovoltaics, working in solar, I was the only woman in my class when I was taking classes, and I was the only woman in the company I was hired into. I can tell you that I was one of the first women when I was teaching this stuff. And now there's a lot more, but I don't know how many women are in solar. Is it half? I don't think so. But we need to get women more technically involved in the field. I have my master's in electrical engineering. I have my master's in systems engineering. I have my electrician's training. I have other certifications and other things, but we need to get more women more technically involved in the field. How are we going to do that? A lot of what stops us as women is our own fears. We need to be able to get past that and really believe in ourselves and talk to each other and support each other. So why don't we have more women? What types of jobs are we doing right now? And what types of jobs do we want to do? And what are our expectations? We need to know that for ourselves so we can move forward. So one of the things that I've done is I've worked with different folks, especially with folks that are now part of Solar Energy International, but working with women in solar, doing training for women specifically. And I started doing that back in, I think, 1997. And why did we do separate training for women? There was an express need for women wanting separate classes. There was a lack of exposure to power tools and hands-on workshops. There's a comfort level of working in hands-on applications. So women wanted to work with other women. Some women I talked to wouldn't take classes in a mixed class with men. So, and also being the minority in a male class, in a mostly male class, I can tell you that I experienced that all the way through my solar training, my electrician's training, and my engineering school. I was usually the minority. And then there's social and cultural issues. A lot of women, sometimes we just learn differently. How I see these classes that I've taught are men and women are completely capable of doing the same job. But women really want to know the details. They want to step back, they want to understand, they want to know the details. I certainly work like that myself. And the men, a lot of times, this is not trying to be stereotypical across the board, but a lot of times they'll just jump right in there and start working and eventually figure it out. So there's a difference in how we learn. We always get to the same place, but I kind of look at it like the women kind of want to understand, slowly get there, and eventually they'll get it and get there. And the guys can be somewhat all over the place. And that doesn't always work well in the same class. It can work just fine, but it doesn't always work well, and some women are intimidated by that. So who takes these kinds of classes? There's a large diversity of women who's enrolled in these classes: engineers, utility personnel, educators, students, entrepreneurs, homeowners, women looking for a career change. I had a woman from NASA in my class. She brought her 2 kids that she homeschooled. I've had homemakers. I've had women starting businesses, you name it, all across the board. But we've had all sorts of women taking classes. So each class is unique, has a broad range of experience. And, it doesn't matter if you have experience with tools in the construction industry. These are simple classes and easy to learn. So here's some photos of some of the classes that I've been part of. There we are, standing with some photovoltaic modules, working with power tools, working up on scaffolding. So where do we go from here? So women complete their training, and where do they go? They can start their own companies, work for other companies, install their own systems, pass on the knowledge, enroll in other renewable energy classes, really get motivated to do what they need to do for themselves. So they can obtain licenses, write books. All these things have happened from women in classes that I've taught. Written articles, teach their own PV workshops, all sorts of things. So this is a starting place for many women. There continues to be a need for these classes. Technology is not gender specific. I really just want to talk in general, really want to know what motivates you. Why are you in solar? Why aren't you in solar? What do you need to get there? What do you need to get past the barriers and the issues that make it impossible for you to get where you want? So, and for those of you that want to take classes in photovoltaics or any renewable energy classes, taking a class is one thing, but that might not get you to a place where you can start your own business or install a system or work for a company even. You might have to take more classes. There might be more training needed. So here's some more pictures that I have. This is one of the first workshops that I taught in 1997. Here's a workshop that we taught in 2003. And this was a workshop in Austin. And we put a photovoltaic system at the youth hostel in Austin. So we trained the women, we stayed at the youth hostel, the local activists threw us a party. It was a really great experience. All of these workshops have been a great experience, and I really like to work with and empower women. So here's the photovoltaic system finished on the top of the youth hostel in Austin. This is a photovoltaic workshop that I taught in 2005 here in Albuquerque, and it is on top of the Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice. This Albuquerque Center for Peace and Justice, by the way, just put in a grant to get another kilowatt, and if this is just a kilowatt system, and if they get it, we're going to have an all-women's class to put it in, to install the system. This is a class that I taught in Portland, Oregon in 2004. What was interesting about this class is we worked with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, so not all of, but most of the women working in this class were apprentice electricians. And it was fabulous to work with apprentice electricians. Oregon is a very strong union state, and so we needed to work with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers in order to make sure that the class went well and train the local people for the skills that they needed in that area. So we were up a couple stories. Here we are with all our safety gear on and our power tools. I like taking pictures of women with power tools. And here's some of the finished systems in Portland. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but these are the questions I ask myself, and I've talked about several times at different conferences and in different venues, but why am I in solar? What inspired me? What held me back? What I really want to know is, I want to know what your story is. I can tell you that I was motivated to be in solar. My very short story is I studied renewable energy in college, and after I was done with college, I ran into this guy on the beach in Jamaica, and we started talking. We ended up being scuba buddies. And after we went diving together, we ended up talking, and he worked at what is now Solar Energy International. He's become a good friend of mine. But that conversation there on the beach in Jamaica is what inspired me to move to Colorado from Washington, D.C. area and take a year-long class in solar, which was solar thermal and photovoltaics, and really get myself in the field. And that was almost 30 years ago. I want to know what your story is. I want to know what holds you back. I want to know what your obstacles and barriers are. So, how do we encourage each other? How do we inspire each other? Where do we start? We want to take pride in our work. How do we do that? And how do we get pride and respect in our lives? That's a bigger question for us. What makes us powerful, and how do we empower each other? So I put this slide up of Gabrielle Giffords because she is so inspiring to me. This woman was very involved in renewable energy. I'll quickly read you the inscription here, but her inspiration comes from an unwavering confidence in what renewable energy can do. For the world, for her home state, we have the talent, skills, and resources to lead all aspects of the solar industry. From research and development to product design, from manufacturing to installation, from the exporting of solar products to the exporting of clean solar power itself, the solar industry can contribute significantly to job growth and economic recovery in Arizona, which is where Gabrielle Gifford is from. And Gifford stated this in an article in the Tucson Centennial, and this was before she was shot. And since she's been shot, she is such an incredible inspiration to all of us. She stood up, she got back on her feet, she got out there, and she is recovering and still inspiring people as she goes. So I have a lot of respect for this woman. And there's lots of women in our lives that we have respect for. Some of them in our families, some of them have been teachers of ours, some of them have been just people that we've gotten to know for a moment, or just a really short snippet in time. So for more information, you can contact me at mbwildwoman@gmail.com.